So, welcome to my show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo and Going Bold network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They do not intend to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. My name's Tina Huggins, your divorce coach specialist, divorce consultant, restorative family mediator, and co-parenting professional. Thank you for joining us. Today's show is called Support Through My Grief. And my guest today is somebody very special to me, John D. Allen. And before I introduce John, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. And the reason for the name of the show, Supporting Me Through My Grief, is because John has supported me utmost. He's been my biggest support through this whole grief process of me dealing with my husband. For those of you who don't know, I lost my husband around 6 months ago from the time that this is filmed. And so John has been a huge support to that. So I want to tell you a little bit more about John. John owns Allen's Small Business Coaching. That's actually how I met John over 2 years ago. John has been coaching and training small business entrepreneurs for over 20 years and has specialized in helping them with their marketing aspects. John brings 35 years of corporate experience from different industries. This includes decades of sales and marketing experience from his work with various business-to-business services, where he started at the very bottom and worked himself up before he finished his position as a his corporate life as a provincial manager for the fourth largest physical security company in the world. John is visiting us today from Canada. And this is how I met John. So I actually asked John if he would coach me, and he graciously accepted my offer. And we've remained good friends ever since. Like I said, he's been my biggest supporter to the point that as soon as he found out that I lost my husband, John has messaged me on Facebook Messenger no less than twice a day, every single day since I lost my husband. So I thank you very much, John, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show with me.
You're more than welcome, Tina, and I'm glad I can support you as you're going through this because, hey, been there and done that. It's not fun. And so I'm glad I can help. And thank you for the wonderful introduction.
You're so welcome. So John, you lost your wife several years back. So kind of tell me just a little bit about what you got to experience and why it's been so important for you to help me.
Basically, she passed away from cancer. She was misdiagnosed, and which didn't help any. And then took her to the hospital on August the 15th of '08, and because she was in a lot of pain, and we were in the emergency ward closes at 9 o'clock. We're still in there. This doctor kept coming back. I got to ask more questions. We got to do more of this, got to do more of that. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? So at about 10:30 that night, we got there by the way, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 10:30 that night, he says, take a look at this x-ray. I said, what am I looking at? And he said, well, your wife's hip is about the thickness of a piece of photocopy paper. That's how thick the bone was. So that bone can break at any time and it's full of cancer. So that was fine. They want to admit her to the hospital. So she's in that particular hospital for 2 weeks. They decide they want to kick her out. So they're going to send her home. And me being the polite individual I said, cut this crap. And I said, she's going to be there by herself. What happens if she falls? The doctor's there along with these social workers. The social worker's doing all the talking. She said, well, she could just call somebody. So fortunately for me, it was the company cell phone. I bounced it off the terrazzo floor about 10 feet from her. And I said, pick it up. And I said it 5 times, and each time got a little meaner. She said, well, I can't reach it. How the hell do you expect her to reach it? And I said, then So she does reach it there and the front door's locked. Who's going to get in? Well, they'll just break the door. That's good. Who's going to pay for it? She said, well, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you who pays for it. I said, the homeowner, because the ambulance and all that, they just close the door. They don't give a rat's ass whether it's secured or not. She said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, because I provide security for homes when these guys do this. So I'm quite aware of it. So then the best part was the doctor looks at me and he says, well, what happens if she falls here? And I looked at him, I think after I picked my jaw up, and I said, just out of curiosity, where the are we? I said, there's an emergency ward 1 floor below. I would think. No, I said, I'm not sure, but I would think this is called a hospital. And you people help people that are sick and hurt. Is that correct? And he's, well, she could stay, and he turned around and walked out of the room. They kicked her out a couple of days later. She was home for a couple of weeks and then went to another hospital, and she never left the hospital. But it was interesting. The other part I found out was you have to be an advocate for people. If you're not their advocate, the healthcare system will kick you out. Canada's healthcare is worse than you guys. And simply, if you need elective surgery, you can be on a list for 3 years, but that's another story. And when she was in palliative care, they decided they should move her to, and they didn't have one of these hospice. They just had homes where people take in the sick people. They were going to move her there. I said, okay, which one of these houses has all the drugs she needs? Well, none of them. So I said, what happens? Well, we could have a nurse go out in the morning and one go out at night. Okay, what happens in between? Well, I guess if she was really hurt, they could call somebody. And my words were getting short. None of them had more than 4 letters, so the nurses and doctors were having no problem understanding me. I said to them, just out of curiosity, this was in Saskatchewan, I said, does Sask Health pay for this bed? Yes. Does Sask Health give a damn who's laying in there? No. Good, she's staying. And the doctor there said, looks at me and he said, I guess you're right. I said, the cocktails are getting so the nurses can't mix them. They've got to be mixed by the pharmacist and brought up. Which one of these care homes even can do that besides none? So, like I say, I learned about being an advocate for them, and it was an interesting experience. One of the experiences was, I don't know if she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist. She just graduated. And she comes in, this is February in Saskatchewan, 40 below zero was a common temperature. And those little metal things they have in the doors of the rooms, if you ran over them with her on the bed, she'd scream from pain. So this lady said, I'm going to take her down to the back door of the hospital so she can watch people come in and out. Now, in between the foyer, it's not heated. This is where she's going to have her. I said, it's 40 below out. You're going to run over this little metal thing. You're going to run over them in the elevator. You're going to run over getting out of the elevator. And you're going to put her in an area where it's 40 friggin' below.
Mhm.
What is wrong with your head? And she says, well, in the book it says. That was the wrong thing to tell me at that point, because I said, you can stick your book basically where the sun doesn't shine. Anyways, I was talking to her boss a couple of days later. The boss said, what did you say to her? I said, not much. I just explained that what it says in the book and what actually happens with real people aren't always the same. He said, she's had quite a change of heart. I said, most of my words didn't have more than 4 letters, so she had no problem understanding what I was saying.
Well, I've known you long enough that I know those 4-letter words that you can say.
And,
We're
you know,
kind of being we're kind of being nice rated a little bit today.
you know, But it was a case of, if you don't stand up for the person, they will walk all over you. They will, they don't care, because all you are to them is a dollar sign. And it's sad that our healthcare systems have come to that,
Yeah.
that all you are is a dollar sign.
Yeah. And I've been lucky in the last, I don't know, 10 years not to deal with too much of that. Um, when I lived in Southern Colorado, there was a lot of that, and that was the hospital I worked in as a EMT. And so I can tell you I went in many, many, many times, not just as an EMT, but with friends or people I helped take in. And my God, we would sit in the ER for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of that time, the doctor was watching a show and just didn't want to break the show until it was over.
Yeah.
I got to hear that as an EMT, so I knew that. Now, in northern Colorado, where I lived before moving to Arkansas, everybody was just wonderful there. They got us in and got us out as quickly as possible, which actually is probably better for the insurance aspects of everything and the hospital, because then they don't have you there forever taking up bed and space. And then when my husband, so the story, and I haven't told this story except for in private. So he was having neck pain for weeks, lots of weeks, and I would work on his neck and work on his neck. And I didn't know how bad that pain was and how many ibuprofens he was taking until after he died. And there was bottles of ibuprofen in the garage, in the wood shop, just everywhere there was bottles of ibuprofen because he was taking so much of it. Apparently, what had happened is there was a blockage inside one of the vessels in his neck, and I'm assuming that it was probably killing the muscle, and that would cause a lot of muscle pain if it's not getting enough blood flow. And we had gone out the day before and enjoyed ourselves, had a great dinner, and it was pre-birthday. My birthday was 2 days, and we enjoyed ourselves, had great conversations with people in Branson, Missouri. And then we headed back. And that specific day that he went down on me, we had gone out to dinner that night as well. We had gone out and eaten Mexican and we had this wonderful group of margaritas that we had that were sample margaritas, and we just shared them. And then we went home and he was having pain. I'm sure he took more ibuprofens. And then he also took 5 milligrams of THC. And it wasn't within, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of him taking that THC. He got sick to his stomach. He wanted to lay down. Then he got up. He thought he was going to throw up, and he laid in the hall. And then he got up. He did throw up. And I said, "We're going to the doctor. We're going to the ER right now." So in the process of that, he thought he'd better clean up. So he stood up and walked the few steps to the bathroom, and he collapsed on me. At that point, I knew as an EMT that he was going through a heart attack. There was no sign of the heart attack except for the diaphoresis. So he was sweating, cold and clammy. So I got my gear and I checked him, and his vitals read okay. I've already called the ambulance at this point. A paramedic was close by, stopped. His vitals were okay. Hospital or the ambulance get there, his vitals were okay. So they called it in, and the doctor right away knew what was happening, said, "Bring him in." So they brought him in. It was about 30 minutes away. So I was about, I don't know, 30 minutes-ish behind him. I get there. They telling me what's going to happen. They already know this is going to take place. So they're taking him in. So at this point, my husband hadn't spoken in over an hour. And so the ambulance gets there, or the doctor gets there to wheel him away. And we actually stopped him. They stopped him and let me hold his hand and tell him I love him. And he very audibly told me he loved me. They wheeled him in. And then when they wheeled him out, there was a point where they told me how much blockages they were, and they only put one catheter in. And they said he must have taken a lot more THC than they had suggested, because they didn't have to sedate him in this process. And so at that point, now we're in the room together. So I open his eyelids and they're pinpointed. And I don't know about regular doctors and nurses, but on an ambulance, that means brain. stuff is going on. So I'm telling them, they said, oh no, we're just going to let him wake up. He'll wake up on his own. Well, hours and hours go by and nothing changes. In fact, his vitals start to decrease and they start worrying about him. And so through the course of that day, backing it up just a little bit, in the point where he was in the ER, and I don't know how many people believe in communication with soul to soul, but during that time I was sitting in the waiting room and he tells me through just thought process, he says, I'm going to return to my body, but I'm not going to stay. Well, I assume at this point that it's talking about inside the surgery. So I didn't expect him to come out of the surgery. And they're somewhere around that point now, they call a stat to one of the rooms, and I assume it's his room. But they bring him out, they tell me all this, and we go through this for the rest of the night. And close to the rest of the night, he codes. And so they have to do, they had already asked me what to do. And I said, you got to keep him alive. And so they now know that he's in trouble. They have now figured out that he has dealt with a stroke, and they've already moved us from one hospital to the other. Now we're in neuro hospital. The first one was the heart hospital, and this is the neuro hospital. So they've moved us, and he goes down, and I have him do all of the life-saving measures. Of course, they remove me and put me into another room, and this goes on for over an hour. So 90 minutes later, I have a doctor come in, and he is just sweating and profusely, kind of almost freaking out. He doesn't know how to tell me that my husband's going to die. Well, I already know. I already know that he's not going to live. I am trying to keep him alive for his children to have him there to say goodbye to them. So he comes in, and I finally have to stop the doctor, and I have to say, look, I know he's not going to make it. You just need to keep him alive here for his kids, so his kids can all get here from Colorado to Arkansas. One of them was flying in from Alaska to say goodbye to him. So they go out, they do all of that stuff. And during this time, I'm just like, I know as an EMT what goes on when they run a code and everything. So for those of you who don't know, they do heart compressions, and that means that they break the sternum away from the ribs. They have to get down to compress the heart, so it breaks that away. And they had to do this, and they had to shock him, and they had to intubate him, and they had to do all of this stuff to his poor body. And so finally, when I got in there, and everybody's sweating because they've been at it for 90 minutes. Everybody's kind of just out of breath and everything, people in and out of that room and everything. And I just told the nurse, I can't do this to him again. So I basically put a DNR in place at that moment, because there was no sense in and doing it again. Probably wouldn't have survived through that one. So they did their best to keep him alive for the next 24 hours until the kids get there with drugs. And then, of course, they get there and everybody gets to have a little bit of time. I felt it was super important. He so loved his children. So I felt it was so important that he be there, they be there with him and hopefully have one-on-one time a little bit with him in between then. And then his best friend actually flew in. And so we were all there to say goodbye to him in the end. When they finally unplugged him and let him go. And they said that he died of stroke. And so anybody that doesn't understand, it's massive stroke goes into the medulla, so the lower lobe of the brain there, and basically stops all blood flow. And it's just blood clot, basically. And this is lay terms, that stops all of the ability for that brain to work through there. And that's the part that keeps the body alive. So that's my story.
It's quite a story.
Ugh, yeah. And so he died. He went in the day before my birthday. We kept him alive the next day of my birthday, and then he died the day after my birthday. So you have told me that I need to go through my year of firsts, and you're not the only one that has agreed with that after I mentioned that. And other people that have been there tell me, yeah, the year of first is a difficult. So my most difficult one will be that day, the day of my birthday, and that 3-day period there.
That's when you start healing after the first year's over. People, you're doing a great job so far, but you still got to get through that. And there's going to be cycles. Like my wife will be gone 16 years in April, and I still cry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
So,
I did just before we come on the show, um, there was a show that was on, and I know I choose not to watch those kinds of shows just because they bring me to tears. And so just before, and I had all day today, maybe in anticipation for me knowing I was going to talk about this or something. But I feel like Joe was here with me all day, more so, well, between yesterday and today, actually, um, more so than he has been in the last few weeks. The holidays was okay. I actually went through Christmas a little bit better than even prior Christmases, because Christmas is not one of my favorite holidays. It was New Year's Eve and New Year's Day that I kind of struggled with something, and I don't know what that was technically about. I mean, I understand the loss of my husband part, but I didn't understand the significance of the days themselves.
yep. And there's going to be days for no particular reason that is going to hit you.
Hmm.
And just let it go. Don't try to hold it back and fight it and all the rest of it. Just let it flow. And if people look at you like, what's wrong with you? That's their problem. You know, one thing I learned a long time ago, your opinion of me is none of my business. And so, that's how I look at it. If you think I got a problem, that's your problem, not mine. I really don't care.
Right, right.
And,
Yeah.
so keep up the good work. You're doing great.
Well, and a lot of people they'll tell me just that I'm doing great and everything. And I feel sometimes this has been the hardest part for me is sometimes I feel like maybe I'm doing too great. And then I go out driving. That seems to be what kicks it into place, because my husband and I were together 24/7, 330-ish days a year, for the last 4 years. He would leave for 2 months to go to Colorado. And there was a point where I left for a month to go to Florida to be with my dad, but we were together, joined at the hip, 24/7. We were always together. And so whenever I go to drive, that's when it kind of hits me. It's like that's when I hear his voice. That's when, I just have issues. And the worst issue to date has been my oldest son's wedding. Um, it was in October, and I went out, I think it was October 12th. I went out to Colorado, and I was already here right when the hurricane hit. And so we were without electricity here. I'm staying in my camper at this moment. We were without electricity for 12 days, but I had left about 8 days in and went to Arkansas, stayed in Arkansas for about a weekish, and then went on to Colorado. And that day, because my husband wasn't with me and our dog was with me, and it was painful, and I didn't even realize it. I just knew I didn't feel good. And then somebody made a comment about my dog barking, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't even stay for my own son's wedding. I feel totally horrible. My brother was officiating, and I couldn't even stay for the whole 12 minutes of the ceremony and hear him say, I do. I had to leave because my dog was barking and my husband wasn't with me. And what was wonderful about that, and this is how Spirit has blessed me through this whole thing, is I didn't drive crazy, but I ended up with a flat tire on brand new tires. I ended up with a flat tire, and what happened is the first angel that showed up was a DOW officer, a Division of Wildlife, and he helped me with what he could. And then I was on my way again, and the tire went completely flat. Well, lo and behold, we had worked on the wrong tire. My car was misreading the tires, and so it was a back tire instead of my front tire. And my family, all the family members showed up and helped me. There was at one point, I think there was like 8 men working on my car, all family, my sons, everybody, even my ex-husband and his wife showed up and helped, at least support me for that. At one point, my cousin's fiance scooped me up in his arms and he just held on to me. He says, you know, it's okay. We've got you. We're going to get you back on the road. You are going to be okay, just one step at a time. That was the best thing that could have happened at that very moment because I was just fit to be tied. Not so much with the tire, just in general, my son's wedding, but it was such a blessing. And one of my cousins, he was there with me through the whole process, that whole weekend that I was there, and just took care of me, bought new bolts for my tires and did everything because we had to replace them. We couldn't get the lug nuts off, so he bought new lug nuts for me. And it was just it was just incredible how much love I had from my family.
Actually, and that's what you need. You know, people that have never experienced say, well, 2 or 3 days, it's all over. That's a crock. It's not all over in 2 or 3 days. It can go on for years. And, anybody that tells you different is full of crap. And I'll use that 4-letter word than it's something else.
We don't want to talk about the shit.
So, no, but I'm glad that people were there to help you because that's what you need. You, you're in a very vulnerable position and at a time. And if you don't get the help, you can go crazy on it.
hmm hmm
So I'm
Yeah.
really glad it's all working out for you.
Well, and you were pretty much my first real angel showing up the way that you did. I mean, I had local angels that brought food and things like that. And then when you started messaging me every morning and every night, I look forward to those messages. It's like I know I miss them at night sometimes because I go to bed rather early. I'm here alone in my camper, and so I go to bed rather early. And but I'm awake. You and I are awake a lot of times at the same time. And it's just something I look forward to when I open up my phone every morning and in the evenings if I get a chance to stay up that late and read. So I appreciate it very much.
Like I say, I'm glad I could help. It's, you know, been there and done that. It's crap. And you need somebody because what happens to so many people, they don't realize it, is once the funeral's over and everybody's gone, a lot of these people are on their own. And that's when the challenges really hit. Because if you don't have that extra support, you're going to go through hell by yourself. And that part's no fun at all.
hmm Yeah. 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 The day of his funeral in Colorado, the funeral part was okay. But after that, family getting together, and I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and I had a few drinks, and family members drink too much, things are said, la la la. I ended up, even with not feeling like I should be driving, I ended up leaving Colorado. That's it. I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. This is not where I belong anymore. So I left and I drove back through the night. I left, I don't know, probably 10 p.m. and I drove through the night to get back through into Arkansas. I ended up stopping twice and taking cat naps and stuff. But that again, driving is therapeutic as well as difficult. It was always therapeutic. Whenever I was upset, I would just go drive because driving, I'm alone and I get that windshield time with spirit. And in this case, driving now, I get this empty seat next to me that has a voice that seems to talk to me every once in a while. And so it's like I went to go pick up a meal today. I have a friend who's sick and I went to go pick up a meal for them and Joe was there. Joe was there telling me, I'm here. I haven't left you. I'm here. And it's like, oh yes. And I know you're here. I haven't been completely open to him. And I know that you tell me just listen to Joe every day. You tell me that almost every single day. And I do listen. But I haven't been as open since New Year's. And so it's like it's just time to reopen that door so that I can hear and feel again.
Yep. And like I said, he'll always be with you in your heart.
hmm
Just never forget him.
Yep. Yep. Never, never. And a lot of people, because Joe was my perfect mate. And we had a perfect love. And people are like, how can you deal as good as you are? And I say, I have a broken heart. It's in pieces. And what's holding it together is the love that he had for me and the love I had for him. That's what fills in the gaps. It's that continued love. And, there's been talk, like I removed my wedding band once I got over here to Arkansas or to South Carolina. I was here for a couple of months actually before I removed it. And I removed it more so for just testing the waters with myself. And the reason is that I felt I felt guilty being in the tavern where my son works and talking to people and people looking at me like I was cheating on my husband. And I didn't like that because that's something I would never have done with him. So I removed my ring and I've been okay. I wear what he got to me as our engagement band because we had a pirate wedding. And so this has skulls on it and a red heart ruby. And so I wear that on my right hand every day, pretty much. And it's just a reminder. Occasionally I'll put the wedding band on that hand, but it's my reminder. I wear another ring that has love on it, and then another ring that has the infinity sign on it, which is forever. And those are all just reminders of my love for Joe and how wonderful it was.
No. Oh, you were very lucky to have that relationship.
hmm I was lucky. He, my first relationship, my first marriage, it's not that he was the wrong man. It's just that we weren't meant to be together forever. He gave me two wonderful children. We parented together. We still can communicate even now, and so that I'm blessed with. And yeah, the end of that relationship was not healthy, not at all, not for him, not for me. And so I was definitely blessed. I didn't get remarried for over 17 years after I had divorced him. I had several long-term relationships, but I couldn't remarry. My rule to myself was I'm not remarrying unless I know it's forever. And I knew that Joe was my forever.
Good.
And he was. And he was, you
That's
know.
excellent.
Yeah, but again, it's the love that I got to share with him, and it's that I get to take with me every day, every moment. It will never, like you said, never leave my heart. It will always be there. Even in the course of any new relationship I might get into, it's going to be there because
Yeah,
it's going to be the strength. And I know you've been remarried, so that's something I would like to ask you is how that came about and how different it is and how special that is for you.
it's different because the whole relationship is different. I had basically the same type of relationship you had with Joe, only mine was for 30 years. So,
Mm.
and then now it's a great relationship. It's obviously different, you know, but I look at it this way. It's you building an entirely different life because obviously it's a different person. So there's different likes, dislikes, and all the rest of it. It's just like a long-term, having a long-term relationship. You got to get used to the other person and what have you. And she was telling me that for first 3 or 4 years, I kept calling her by my wife's name. I wasn't doing it on purpose, but when you're together with somebody for 30 years, that
Right.
that
How could you
name is,
not?
that name is there. And so, no, she never said anything. I was blessed that way. So it was, it's been good. And, life is good.
And that's wonderful to hear. I had another guy on the show who works with widowers, and he was saying that men default when their wife dies, they default to a new relationship almost immediately because they don't know one, how to be alone. They don't know two, how to take care of themselves, cook, clean, do all of that kind of stuff. So they freak out and they right away get into a relationship. Like I know one from years back. His wife died, and within 3 months, I believe he was married to his wife's sister, because she had never been married. and she had gone over to take care of him. And it just happened that that was the very best thing for her and for him, is to get married. And and he was saying that so often those marriages don't work. Within just months, in a lot of cases, they ended up getting divorced because they got married um, with wrong ideas, because they were thinking that this will be just like what they just lost.
Yep. Yep. And I experienced that. It's you go back and you compare it, and it's the wrong way to
Hmm.
do it because they're two entirely different people. But in your mind, it was, well, she always did this, so this one could do it. No,
You
it
should
doesn't work
always
that
do
way.
this. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can
And
agree
so
with what the guy
luckily,
said.
yeah. And and luckily, I have you here to teach me the ropes, so to speak. And so I already know that if indeed that I get involved in a new relationship, I know it'll be completely different, and it'll be special for its own reasons, and not because of my wonderful Joe. It
Yeah,
has to be different.
yeah, and you know, our little thing, yeah, and I got together with her actually shortly after my wife passed away as well. So, I can relate to what that other guy was saying. But again, at first, I wanted it to be just like the marriage, and there's no way it was going to be. So that's there. I could see why people end up getting divorced and what have you shortly thereafter, because your expectations, like coming from the guy's end, are, well, it should be the same. No, it's not, and it never
Mm,
will be. But if you can't accept the differences, you got a problem.
yeah. And that's something that, as I move forward, and if that is something that takes place in my near future, then, or near any future, um, I've kept that in mind. When I took the ring off, now I'm uncomfortable staying for any length of time at the tavern, and I go in because my son works there, and I that's one of the reasons why I moved here. Is these people are people I already knew, and I already liked these people because they would come out to visit my son.
Yeah,
So there's a couple kind of helped me through all of.
yep, yeah, and you need it. You know, people, if they tell you they're an island, they can do it all themselves. They're full of it. You need other people around you, and but you also need time to yourself. So you've been doing I keep telling you you're doing a great job, but yeah, you're doing it. You're going through. You've had people around you. You've had your alone time, and you're balancing it out. So you're doing a great job.
Mhm. And and I'm listening to you. That's why I'm doing a great job. I'm listening to you, and I've got a couple other people that check in on me on a regular basis, and they're watching my posts, they're seeing what I'm doing, especially the videos I'm putting out, and they're paying attention, and they're letting me know what they're seeing. So that's been helpful. So I want to just kind of shift gears before we get done with this. When I met you from Alignable, and you are a business marketing coach. And so I can tell our audience that I am where I'm at today because I worked with John. I made sure that when I asked John if he could be my coach, I asked him, and then I promised myself. I did the yes man thing from the movie Yes Man, the Jim Carrey movie, I think is what it was called. And it I just decided that everything that you said I would do. And there was a couple of things that didn't work, but because I did them, when I was able to get outside of the box days, I appreciate that a ton.
Now, well, not everything works for everybody. So, and that's the neat part. The biggest thing with so many people is they're afraid to try something, or they've been doing it this way forever and it isn't working, but I got to keep doing it because I've been doing it forever. Well, that's dumber than hell. But, you know, I tell people now, I said, whenever you go to have a conversation with somebody, you're going into a sales situation, have a conversation. And the whole thing you want to do is look at them as if they're not your ideal prospect. That takes the pressure off of you and off of them. But the other thing is just have a conversation to see what their real problem is and if you can help them. The other part is they have to qualify to work with you. You don't qualify to work with them. Because if you're taking on somebody just for the money, you're going to end up with some real crappy clients, what have you. And it's never going to be their fault that it doesn't work. It's always going to be yours. So don't be shy about telling people you got to qualify to work with me. And they'll look at you like, what do you mean? Just because you got a pulse and a wallet doesn't mean you qualify. And, you know, if I don't like your attitude or what have you, we're not working together. I'll give you to somebody I don't like and go from there. But, people, you have to feel good about them. They have to fit in with your thinking, your philosophies and values. If not, you're wasting your time. And all you're doing in it is you're in it for the money, and it's never going to work.
Yeah, I remember you saying something about qualifying when we were kind of working together early on, and I'm like now re-listening to you say that, and I'm like, thank God I qualified. You were basically the very best thing that ever happened to me in my business to make sure that I took my steps forward and made the leaps that I needed to make.
Well, it's like I talked to you when I use the comparison I was using with you was your martial arts background. Put it when you're talking to people, put it in a comparison to something they understand and do. You knew the effort and everything else you had to take to get to where you are in martial arts. Business is no different. You've got to put in the time and effort. If you think you're going to get in there and bang, it's going to happen overnight, I want whatever you're smoking because it must be good. It's not going to happen.
Yes, yes. And I tell people that all the time. You got to be consistent with what you're doing. And I haven't been as consistent, especially here in the last several weeks. I'm in the process of buying a house and all of that. So that's getting in the way of everything. Everybody tells me jump, and it's like, okay, I have to jump today. So my consistency that I had put in is paying off even now that I'm unable to be consistent because everybody still knows me. And so
Yep.
they'll say, "Hey, I haven't seen or heard from you in a few days. Are you okay?" And it's like, "Okay, so now it's time for me to do something else." So I'm getting my consistency back. I started working on that this week, week, new year. So that's where I'm at there.
Well, you're doing good. Just keep it up. Like I tell you, keep putting one foot in front of the other. Nobody goes across Grand Canyon in one step. It's in little steps. That's the only way you're going to make it. So, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day and all the rest of the stuff we all hear. It takes time. Now,
Amen.
you can speed things up sometimes, but you still have to put in the effort. One of the examples that I've shared with you is like farming. You don't put the corn in the ground today and dig it up tomorrow and expect to be able to have the corn on the cob. Doesn't work that way. The only way it works that way is when you do it with little kids and they go dig it up to see what's happening, and that's funny. But
Yep. Well, we're coming to the end, and I'm going to have you back here, John, just because I want to talk about the work that you do so people can understand the work a little bit more. We only got into that just a little bit here at the end, but we'll have you come back so that you can kind of explain how you helped me and what we did to get me forward. And we'll have another conversation. So for those of you out there, the viewers, I'm a certified divorce coach, meaning I'm trained in divorce and its complexities. I specialize in high conflict divorce, especially from toxic narcissistic partners. My late husband, my father, and myself all experienced that abuse. So I not only know that from the knowledge from my training, I know that firsthand. I can be reached through my email at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's Coach, COACH, Tina, TINA, Lynn, LYNN @gmail.com. And my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can also find me on social media on Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins. That's HUGGINS. LinkedIn under Tina Huggins. Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. So I've given all my stuff, and I know your contact information is going to be here in the show notes, John, but how can our viewers get a hold of you?
You can reach out at alanwwsolutions@gmail.com. My website is www.smallbusinesscoaching.com. You can reach me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn John D. Allen Small Biz Coaching. I'm on a line. Well, I couldn't tell you what that one is. And
That's the one that we're on.
I use it all the time, but I never
Right.
reach.
I
So
haven't been on there in a couple of weeks, actually, so that's bad for
the
me.
other thing that I'd like to say is my coach and I, we're just going to start putting together our own group. It's going to be free to join. What we're going to do is he's been in marketing for 50 plus years. And, so have I. So what we're going to do is put together a free program, and we'll be sharing marketing strategies and secrets that people can use to grow their business. I don't have all the details yet of how to connect on it. We're putting them together, but that's something that's coming up that a lot of people will be able to benefit from. And
Awesome.
just so you're aware, he was in the insurance business for 17 years. For 15 of them, he was in the Millionaires Roundtable. That means he made a minimum of $1 million a year for 15 years.
Wow. So that will be the topic of our next show. So now I get to keep in touch with you. And when you're ready to do that, then we'll bring you back on. So then you have something big to talk about.
Sounds good. Anytime you want, I'd be more than happy to spend some time with you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So this show talks about domestic violence. If you are experiencing violence right now, please call 911 or 999 if you're in the UK. Get the police officers there and press charges. The pressing the charges is your key outside of the house. Joe often said, don't drop the charges. Once you drop those charges, then things fall apart even worse. Things get worse. If you are experiencing domestic violence or you know somebody who is, please call a domestic hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. If this has been helpful for you, please like, comment, and share so that this can help others. I thank you again, John, for coming on with us, and I will have you on soon. Thank you.
And as a former cop, I agree with you 100% about domestic violence.
Great. Well, thank you.